Let's talk about the New York Jets because what else do you want to do on a Tuesday night in October? The 0-6 New York Jets. I know most of you guys are here because I post Boston Celtics videos, even though it's been a few months. I have to get out of the habit of only posting when terrible things happen. I posted when Tatum tore his Achilles, get well soon, which he is getting well. And I'm posting now when the Jets are 0-6, winless, and it feels like there's no win on the horizon. But I'm making this video because I had a tweet that went somewhat viral. It got around Jets Twitter talking about the next 3 games for the New York Jets being the firing zone for Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji. And when I say the firing zone, I'm talking about the next 3 opponents for the New York Jets because they are the Carolina Panthers, Cincinnati Bengals, and the Cleveland Browns. 3 of the worst teams in football. Maybe the Panthers shouldn't be in that discussion because they are 3-3. They're 500. Just had a big win over the Dallas Cowboys. But overall, those are 3 teams we're looking at saying probably bottom 10 teams in the NFL. I say it's the firing zone because the New York Jets are 0-6, like I said. And if you don't win a single one of those games, where is the season going? Are we really talking about 0-17? Are we talking about 2-15? We're talking about a team that even the lowest of expectations for the Jets, I don't think you thought they were going to be winless bad. So I want to create this video to do a very non-emotional view of Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji, see where they stand, see what they've gotten right, see what they've gotten wrong. Because, after Sunday football, it's very easy to get emotional and say, fire everyone, cut Justin Fields, completely start over from scratch. And well, we'll see if that should be true or not. I want to take a step back, let it marinate for a couple of days and see what I really think about the New York Jets and how I feel about this regime so far. So just give a little bit of background, right? Coming into the season, the expectations were low for New York. Their over-under win total by Vegas. I'm using Vegas because I don't want to use my opinion because I'm a Jets fan. I don't want to use someone else's opinion because they might hate the Jets. But Vegas sports books had the Jets at a 6.5 win total. The only teams lower than them were the Browns and Giants at 5.5 wins, as well as the Saints at 4.5 wins. I think we could say all 3 of those teams right now are better than the Jets. The Browns defense is fantastic. The Giants look alive with Jackson Dart. And the Saints have been competitive in basically every single game this season. Spencer Rattler looks good. So we're coming into the season knowing the Jets aren't Super Bowl contenders. We know the Jets aren't going to compete, even with the Buffalo Bills or probably New England Patriots for second place. We knew the expectations were low for the New York Jets team. And there was a few teams tied with the Jets at 6.5. But I want to just set this foundation so it's not like the Jets had the absolute lowest win total entering this year, and it was set at 3.5 wins, and everyone and their mother knew this was going to be the worst team in football. That's not the case, right? I think most people thought that this was going to be a team picking in the top 10, but probably not number 1 overall, given the talent they already had on defense, some on offense, and what some believed, rightfully or wrongfully, an upgrade at coach. Because Aaron Glenn made it pretty apparent early on in his Jets tenure that this team needs to be coached, and this team wants to be coached. He took a couple subtle jabs at Robert Saleh in his first couple of press conferences, saying that this team wasn't coached properly and talking about the referees and the penalties. So that's just the basis. That's just the foundation for this video. But now let's talk about who the New York Jets are. They're the worst team in football right now. I don't think anyone's debating that. Even the biggest of Jets fans, which I am, think they're the worst team in football. In quarters 1 through 3 this season, I'm taking out the fourth quarter because the Jets have gotten blown out a lot, and they have a lot of garbage time stats that, truthfully, I don't care about. In quarters 1 to 3 this season, they were dead last in defensive EPA before the Broncos game. The Broncos game brought that up to like 28th, 27th because Bo Nix and that offense had a terrible game. They were second to last in EPA per play on offense. I know the Justin Fields numbers look pretty, has 0 interceptions, but the truth of the matter is, for the first 3 quarters of football, they have been one of the worst offenses in the NFL, I think, to nobody's surprise. They've set a record for being the first team in NFL history to go 0-5 and force 0 turnovers in NFL history. NFL has been around for a very long time. This is a team that has not been opportunistic when it comes to taking the ball over, intercepting, forcing fumbles. They did get one against Denver, and they got a little bit lucky. It might have been a kickoff, I believe. I think it was the first play of the game. Slept through that because I barely even wanted to watch that game to begin with. They also have the second worst third down offense. And I think that's a bit expected when you have a passing game as limited as it is, because Justin Fields is your quarterback and you knew there was going to be some limitations coming into the season. But we asked the Jets to be bad, but a normal bad team, right? Can you be somewhere between the 25th to 18th team in the NFL, maybe 28th to 18th, but just don't be the laughing stock of football. And they are the laughing stock of football right now. They've had 2 competitive games this season. Week 1 against the Steelers, which was probably the only time you felt good about being a Jets fan this year. After week 1, I was like, wow, Tanner Engstrand, hold on. He might have something as a play caller. Justin Fields, are we going to be able to fully unlock him, unlike the Steelers and Bears weren't able to do? Week 1 was the high of the Jets season, and they were competitive against the Broncos. They very easily could have won that game, but I almost don't even want to give them credit because of how terrible they played on offense and how terrible I thought the coaching was. I mean, the malpractice in terms of clock management. We're going to get into the Broncos game later. I don't want to get into it yet. But technically, they've been competitive in 2 games. In between, you got blown out by the Bills. The Bills have shown so far this season that they're okay. They're not this world beater that we expected them to be. They lost to the Patriots. They lost to the Falcons, 2 middle-of-the-pack teams. This Bills team is nothing sensational. You should at least be competitive with them. But fine, it's Josh Allen, the Bills. You got blown out. You got dominated by the Bucs. The Buccaneers, who look like maybe the best team in football, so I want to give them credit. I know the scoreboard was a 3-point game at the end. That wasn't the reality of the situation. The Jets were getting dominated in this game from start to finish. Will McDonald just made a great play on a field goal attempt and ended up blocking it, returning it for 6. So the score looked close, but in reality, it was never close. That was with Tyrod Taylor, by the way, because Justin Fields missed that game. Moving on, you played the Miami Dolphins. Probably the second worst team in football, maybe the Bengals, but Joe Flacco looks decent. So I think the Dolphins are the second worst team in football right now. They had 3 turnovers and 13 penalties against the Miami Dolphins and lost. Another game where the Jets never really ever had momentum. It was basically Miami controlling the game for the entirety of that Monday Night Football game. So yeah, one game where you feel good about the New York Jets, and that comes week 1 against the Steelers. So let's now talk about how we should feel about Darren Muji and how we should feel about Aaron Glenn. Because again, you felt good 1 out of 6 times, and I thought by now most people thought you'd have at least 1 win, if not 2. First, Aaron Glenn. I talked about it earlier, but Aaron Glenn's one of his key talking points coming into the season was this team needs to be coached. And this team wants to be coached. He took shots at Robert Saleh. He said how undisciplined this team has been. He talked about it every single week leading up to the season in training camp. The Jets finally had refs at training camp, which Robert Saleh, for whatever reason, did not abide by. He didn't want to have refs in training camp. Aaron Glenn said, we're going to have refs. They talked about how physical the practices was. All the beat reporters saying, oh my God, they're tackling, they're going full speed in training camp. All of this hype to lead to what? In every single game this year, except the Broncos game, the Jets have had either more turnovers or more penalties than their opponent. Every game but 1, the Jets have been the less disciplined team. The Jets have been the team that is not paying attention to tiny details. It's been the opposition. And this could be, many different things. 13 penalties against the Dolphins. You have punt returns and kick returns being fumbled. You have your punt returner fair catching the ball on the 2-yard line. You have Justin Fields with his fumbling issue. Running backs, Braylon Allen, Breece Hall with fumbling issues. In any way you could turn the ball over, except Justin Fields not throwing an interception. He just takes 9 sacks a game. Except Justin Fields throwing an interception. You have found ways to turn the ball over every single week. And you have found ways to be penalized every single week, again, except for this Broncos game. So Aaron Glenn, through his first 6 weeks, was practicing discipline and practicing being able to control the things you can control. So far, it hasn't been the case. It has been just as bad, if not worse, than the Robert Saleh era. Moving on to Darren Muji, because I think Muji is a interesting character in this whole Jet cinema we have going on right now. Because Aaron Glenn is number 1 in command, right? Aaron Glenn was hired, then Darren Muji was hired. Darren Muji would not have been hired if Aaron Glenn didn't like him. This has been very well documented. This has been confirmed by beat reporters. Aaron Glenn is number one in charge, but Darren Muji has the GM tag. So we're going to look at his moves, free agency, the draft, and trades, and see if we could grade Darren Muji through 6 weeks this season. Again, it's 6 weeks. We don't know if these are all hits. We don't know if these are all misses, but 6 weeks through the season, should we feel good about Darren Muji? Because at the end of the day, this is probably going to be the guy that is taking a quarterback in the top 3 to 5 picks in the upcoming draft. To start with free agency, it's not looking good so far. You signed Justin Fields to a 2-year, $40 million contract, $30 million guaranteed. It's a bad contract. It was a swing and a miss, but honestly, I don't care. When I saw the free agent market, Justin Fields was the only quarterback that had youth and had upside to him. So yeah, you did have to pay him a little bit more than some of these other veteran quarterbacks out there. And I'm willing to take a swing at a guy that could possibly be a franchise quarterback, even though it was a long shot. Justin Fields right now looks terrible. He looks benchable. If you would have played Tyrod Taylor in the second half of that Broncos game, you probably win the game. But so far, Justin Fields was a miss, even though I'm not that mad at it. Brandon Stevens signed for 3 years, $36 million coming from the Baltimore Ravens. Everyone made fun of it when this deal came through. Ravens fans were praising the Lord, Brandon Stevens, who was off this team, because he was terrible for them last year. And so far through 6 weeks, I think it's safe to say he's been fine. The first couple of the weeks was really ugly, but in the last 3 to 4 weeks, he hasn't been able to clean it up. He's a really good tackler and he's aggressive, so I'll give him that, although he can struggle with penalties at times, being too handsy, and of course, allowing catches, which is the number one thing a cornerback should not do. You signed him 3 years, $36 million, and value-wise, it isn't great. I don't think he's living up to that contract. But even worse, DJ Reed, who I know didn't want to come back to New York, I understand that, signed for just $4 million more annually. It just kind of gives you the lay of the land of how you should value cornerbacks, because DJ Reed is worth far more than $4 million per year more than Brandon Stevens. DJ Reed is I don't want to call him an all-pro level player, but he is a high caliber starting cornerback. He is, when he was with Sauce New York, probably the best CB2 in the NFL. And you cheaped out, paid $4 million less per year for Brandon Stevens. I don't think that's been a great signing. The rest of these players are mostly one-year deals, so I don't want to get too much in terms of how that player has performed because expectations have been low. But overall, the two biggest spots where the Jets needed to address in this offseason, in my opinion, were wide receiver 2 and edge depth. Now, they needed a tackle, right? They got Membu. We'll get into the draft later. But 2 areas where it should have been circled big in red, that these are 2 key areas that every great team usually has some sort of answer for. Wide receiver 2, because it's Garrett and nobody else, and edge. And he didn't address that in free agency. Spoiler, he didn't address that in the NFL draft. In free agency, he signed Tyler Johnson, who has been bad. Tyler Johnson is, a wide receiver 4 at best, and Josh Reynolds, someone who is probably also a wide receiver 4 at best. Both of these guys have gone on the field. Neither of them, shockingly, have looked that impressive. And then at edge, coming into the season, you had 2 edges you felt really good about. Will McDonald showed last season he could be a double-digit sack guy. He showed some elite upside, but you also know he's limited as a edge rusher because he can rush the passer, but he can't really defend the run because he is a smaller, leaner edge rusher compared to a guy like Jermaine Johnson, who can defend the run and can rush the passer. But Jermaine Johnson is coming off a torn Achilles, the biggest injury that you could have in professional sports, and there was no sort of backup plan. You had one free agent signing, which was Rashad Weaver, who isn't on the team anymore. That was the one move you made at edge to go out and try to have some sort of depth behind those 2 guys. And that's why Michael Clemens plays all the time. And everyone hates Michael Clemens. He shouldn't be playing this much, but the Jets are forced to because they have no depth at their edge position. So all in all, free agency, not great. I think even if you're feeling really generous, you give him a C, but we're probably talking more in like that D minus territory. And then let's move on to the draft, because I do think Darren Muji / Aaron Glenn, again, both of these guys are going to be calling the shots here. I think the draft was pretty good so far. The first round, you took Armand Membu. He's looking like a potential franchise tackle. Mason Taylor in the second round at tight end. He's been the Jets' number 2 receiving option. He's looked fine. Is he Brock Bowers, Tyler Warren? No, but he wasn't a first-round pick. He was a second-round pick for a reason, and he's super young, has upside. In the third round, you drafted A.Z. Thomas, someone who hasn't seen the field much, but I will say when the pick came in, most people applauded that pick, saying that is a good value. That's someone that could start for this Jets team as early as this upcoming season. But of course, you signed Brandon Stevens, and then you used a third-round pick at another outside corner. Weird philosophy, but again, it's the third round. If you just want to take the best player available, I'm fine with it. A.Z. Thomas seems like that. Fourth round, Arian Smith. He isn't utilized. He is not currently right now an NFL wide receiver. He would not be starting on probably 29 to 30 other teams. But since the Jets are desperate, they have him running out there. He's someone that could stretch the field vertically, but he is very raw as a wide receiver. A couple other of day 3 guys. You had Malachi Moore, another safety from Bama who was praised after this draft pick, saying he could start in week 1. And he did start in this Broncos game over Tony Adams, who Tony Adams is terrible. He was fine. It's one game. We'll see. And then you had Francisco Mwaga, who struggled the first month of the season. I think he had played good against Denver. And lastly, Tyler Barron, who has 2 pressures through 40 pass rushing snaps. These are, round 4, round 5 guys who, again, they traded up for some of these players too. So I don't want to judge him too harshly on day 3 picks. Day 3 picks tend to not pan out. But so far, all of these picks, maybe outside of Malachi Moore, look a bit regrettable. But overall, I think you have to be happy with the draft because of Membu, because of Mason Taylor. And I do think A.Z. Thomas will be good for the New York Jets. Lastly, we'll talk about trades because this is where Muji has done a really good job. And I want to give him credit for. He has made 3 key trades so far. This started in like late August at the end of training camp all the way up to a couple of weeks ago. He beefed up the defensive line. He traded for Jawan Briggs, who was with the Cleveland Browns, and Harrison Phillips, who was with the Vikings. Those are 2 guys that weren't going to get a lot of playing time, or I guess for Briggs' case, for Phillips' case, they just wanted to move off some of the salary. For late round pick swaps, both of these guys has been tremendous. And the Jets really lacked defensive line depth as well. That's something that I didn't mention prior because they were able to figure that out later down the road. But 2 guys that have been huge for the Jets. Jawan Briggs right now is like the 10th rated interior defensive lineman by PFF. Harrison Phillips has been really good against the run. Awesome trades. And then they also picked up Jarvis Brownlee, a former, I think, day 2, second, third round pick from the Tennessee Titans. He brought some real juice against the Broncos. I thought he was excellent. He graded out super well by PFF's metrics too. So overall, I think all 3 of those players you have to look at saying, Muji, that's a pretty good job, right? So now that we have this information, talked about Aaron Glenn, we talked about Darren Muji. Where do we go from here? Now, I said it on Sunday. We're entering the firing zone for the New York Jets in this regime. I think I was too harsh. They're 0-6, and if they lose to the Panthers, I'll probably say something harsh again because they deserve to be criticized. Because right now, again, you're laughing stock of football. But right now, Muji has shown an ability to draft and trade well. It's only been on the job for 7 months, and again, Aaron Glenn plays a big part in the roster construction as well, so he gets kind of lumped into this too. I wish I had more positive things to say about Aaron Glenn when it comes to the football coach. Because right now, I don't have really anything positive to say about Aaron Glenn, the football coach. He was brought in to be a defensive-minded coach, and the Jets defense has been the worst in football. I said the stats earlier. The worst graded defense before the Broncos game, quarters 1 through 3, when the games actually mattered. There was no defense worse than New York Jets on an EPA per play metric. I want Aaron Glenn to work. He's a former Jet. He loves being here. He connects with the fans. But so far, I have nothing positive to say about Aaron Glenn. He is combative with the media. You had a media reporter ask him after the game in London saying, are you considering a change at quarterback from Justin Fields to Tyrod Taylor? And he scoffed at it and said, what kind of question is that? It's a valid question, Aaron Glenn. Justin Fields just had his worst game as a pro and one of the worst games I've ever seen a Jets quarterback have. I've watched Zach Wilson for years. I've watched Christian Hackenberg. I've seen the worst of the worst of the worst when it comes to quarterbacks. That Justin Fields performance is up there with the worst I have ever seen. So it is more than a valid question for a reporter to ask, especially because the game was in your hands and you got to win, right? There's no playoff mandate, but you can't go 0-17 because I feel pretty confident if you don't win a damn game, you'll end up getting fired and being one and done. So I wish I had more positive things to say about Aaron Glenn. Right now, I don't. I think the defense is bad. I don't think they have an identity, which is my biggest gripe and concern with this team. When Dan Campbell got hired in Detroit, he was aggressive. That was his thing. We're going to go for it on every single fourth down. When I look at Kellen Moore being hired by the New Orleans Saints this past cycle, they're a team that runs a lot of tempo. They lead the league in plays. He is someone who is, of course, an offensive-minded coach, but he says, listen, I know we probably don't have all of the horses to go up there and compete every single week, but if we play fast and we run a lot of plays, we're hoping we could kind of get some yardage and points in the aggregate rather than relying on these explosive plays. And guess what? Spencer Rattler looks pretty damn good. So when I look around the league at situations that had very low expectations, like Dan Campbell in his first year and Kellen Moore currently, you could see an identity, and you can see the coach's impacts and just who they are on the team. Right now, I don't see with Aaron Glenn. Defensively, they've been a mess. Offensively, they're fine running the ball because, of course, you have Justin Fields. But man, it feels like right now he's not giving you the best chance to win, and they're going to stick with him because they paid him. But it's, in my opinion, the wrong choice. So before we head out of here, we've been chatting about the Jets for 20 damn minutes. I just want to quickly talk about the Broncos game because this was one of the only games, one of the two games this season that the Jets could have won. It was 13-11. You forced a holding penalty in the Broncos end zone, which caused the safety to put you ahead by 2 points at the time, and you ended up losing this game. A lot was made at the end of the first half about the Jets faking a punt on 4th and 1 with their entire offensive line out there and Breece Hall out there. The most obvious fake punt in NFL history, which is a topic for another day probably. You get the fake punt, you convert it, and then instead of trying to be aggressive and move down the field to potentially put up 3 points, you just go into halftime. I'm not mad at it. People are mad at it. People are pissed off at it. I get it. What the offense showed you up to that point is they cannot move the football. What the offense showed you was if you let Justin Fields drop back and throw, you're going to get sacked. If you're going to get sacked, you can get fumbled. The Broncos could take the ball back. They could scoop it, score. Terrible things could happen if you drop back with Justin Fields. So if you want to be super, super passive and just say, let's run this clock out, I'm fine with it, truthfully, because that's what the game called for. What I'm not fine with is in the fourth quarter, you do the opposite. You had a very weird miss snap where Breece Hall picks up the ball and gets 6 or 7 yards. All of a sudden, you're on the Broncos like 45 with a couple minutes left, less than a couple minutes left on the clock. All you could really do at that point is run the football. Run it on first down, run on second down, run it on third down, and try to hit a 60-yard field goal. Instead, for whatever reason, on first down, you drop back with Justin Fields, who had been getting sacked the entire game, who had looked terrible the entire game, and who could not make any decisions the entire game. But you put the game in his hands. You can't do that. It's coaching malpractice. Some of that's on Tanner Engstrand and the offensive play calling, but this ultimately falls on the head coach. You have to understand the situation here. You have to realize that your quarterback is not playing at even a JUCO level. He can't make a simple read to the flat. If you give the ball to Breece Hall, and I get it, it's hindsight and it's easy to say now. If you give the ball to Breece Hall 3 times to kick a field goal, maybe you win the game. And now maybe, who knows? Maybe Breece Hall fumbles the ball. Maybe the kick gets blocked. Maybe Nick Folk just misses the kick, although he's been perfect on the season, just hit his career long of 58 yards against the Miami Dolphins 2 weeks prior. Who knows? Maybe something else goes wrong because the New York Jets at the end of the day. But that gives you the best chance to at least try to win the game. You can't drop back with Justin Fields because he's going to get sacked, and then drop back again and he's going to get sacked, and then drop back again on fourth down because he's going to get sacked. I think my rant is over. I'll put a bow on this by saying I want Aaron Glenn to work. I'm going to be rooting for the Jets every single week. I'm going to be rooting for Glenn and Muji and all of this to get figured out down the road. But I think it's more than fair as Jets fans to sit here and really wonder, is this Joe Judge? Is this Gerard Mayo? Is this Adam Gase? Is this whatever, Urban Meyer? The list goes on and on and on, because you can't be the worst defense in football. You can't be the worst offense in football. You can't have the worst turnover differential in the NFL and have one takeaway through 6 weeks. you can't have this laundry list of terrible things happening to you and just expect to be okay with it, especially because this roster is not this bad. This roster, in my opinion, is not 0-6 bad. You cannot convince me if you had Liam Cohen or Mike Vrabel that this team would be 0-6 right now. You have a talented offensive line. You have a real wide receiver one in Garrett Wilson. You have a real RB1 in Brees Hall. There's talent all over this defense, whether it's Quentin Williams, Jermaine, and Will McDonald on the defensive line. The linebackers, Sherwood, who has not played up to his expectations, who is someone they extended in this offseason, and Quincy Williams, who's been banged up, so I'll give you some leeway there. And then in the DB room, you have Sauce Gardner, another guy you extended, who is supposed to be a top 5 corner in football. And Brandon Stevens was your guy. That was the guy you went out and paid. In your head, you're thinking, we have 2 corners that we love. That's a team that's talented enough to be 500. That going into this offseason, we were not looking at the Panthers, Jaguars, and Jets and saying the Jets are by far and away the worst team. It's not even close. I talked about the over-under totals. Those teams were in the vicinity. I hope it works out. I hope I look back in this video in a couple of years when the Jets, I'm not even going to say win a Super Bowl. I'm going to say maybe they win 9 games. Maybe they win 10 games and make the damn playoffs. I hope I can come back to this and say you're an idiot and you're wrong. But right now, it doesn't feel that way. That being said, you can only go up from here. Just win 1 game. You win 1 game, the tide turns, and people will be happy, maybe for once. Thanks for watching.